Welcome back to yet another Edgeworks Series preview for the first round. In this one, we're going to be breaking down the Vancouver Canucks and the Nashville Predators going head-to-head. So who else better to bring on than our two non-biased, I don't know what you want to call them, Vancouver fans, So Many Sports, Matt Russell, and our Nashville Moretto, who may not be so interested in the Nashville Predators. We'll find out during the series preview here today, Alex Moretto. But Moretto, if we're looking at this series here, I mean, we're going to let the Vancouver guys talk, and they'll probably make this one an hour-long podcast. So I want to give you the floor so that you can speak first. I'm looking at this one. The Canucks come in against the Preds so far this year. They're 3-0 this season against them. You look at the series price. We got Vancouver minus 156, Nashville plus 137 right now. You're going to look to some other ways you can find series spreads. You know, Vancouver minus 1.5 plus 145, the Preds plus 1.5 minus 166. I want to open it up to you first and foremost because you were a big Preds guy all year this year. Now you come into this series against these two goofballs over here to our left, right, however you're looking at your screen, and you're looking at a different price here. Are you seeing any value on the Preds? What are your thoughts on how these two teams match up, and what are your thoughts on the initial number that we're seeing right now?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that 0-3 mark for the Predators against the Canucks this year. I remember we had a triple best bet in that first game on the Predators.
At least, and maybe twice.
Yeah, maybe. Did not go according to plan, and as our resident Predators expert / diehard fan, this team was very, very kind to me this season. They returned a lot of I guess money my way by making the playoffs, by going over their point total, by playing above where the market kind of had valued them, and I would love to keep that train going here, especially against a Canuck team that we've talked about kind of wanting to fade at different points throughout the season in the playoffs. My tune is completely flipped, though, and I don't want to sit here and pat these guys on the back and their Canucks team on the back, but you look at the Canucks and what we talked about in that PDO and how that PDO has to come down, the high shooting percentage, the high save percentage, which was, they were really riding in the first half of the season. It has come down. It came down significantly, and guess what? It did not impact this team whatsoever. Their play just ticked up as a unit. So really, honestly, impressive to see how they kind of turned things around in that regard when, we knew that sort of regression was going to hit, but they just elevated other areas of their game to make up for it. Shooting percentage and save percentage over the second half, closer to just kind of league average marks, and it has not impacted them one bit. They were able to fend off the surge from the Oilers to, hold on to that Pacific Division title. And full marks to them. They're no longer a team I'm necessarily dying to fade in this postseason. And if anything, I think the price is a little bit short here on them, and maybe they warrant a bit of a bigger tag here. So unfortunately, I think I've changed my tune a little bit, and just the knife is out, and the Predators laid out, the back is there, and I've just driven that stake in here. Just completely backstab the team that's been so kind to me, but that's just what has to happen in playoff time.
Well, I saw some facial expressions being made over there from where the streets have no name. Mr. Russell, what are your thoughts on the comments from Moretto and where the price is at right now?
I'm reeling right now. I'm just so happy. This is all we've ever wanted out of life. Just a complete abandonment of the Nashville Morettors.
Yes.
Like this is all we've ever dreamed of. This is great. As the team of my youth, as the Canucks, the team of my youth, watching this season, right? It starts off and it's basically like, are they going to lose a game? Maybe not. And 82-0 is in play, and you're just but you're waiting to sort of see how the metrics kind of stack up. And 25, 30 games in, as we get a decent size of a sample, you're looking at the expected goal share and all that kind of stuff, and you're like, oh God, we might be kind of hanging in here for dear life. And Alex and people of his ilk who know how to read a spreadsheet, like myself, we're concerned about that. He more vocal than those of us who are sort of sitting in the corner going like, God, I hope it turns around. And he's right, it did. And now the people who are talking bleep about the Canucks and their even strength metrics, etc., are in shambles right now. That being said, I don't know that the price is too high necessarily. I actually, in theory, would think that maybe the Predators, based on some of their metrics, their high danger scoring talent, power play, etc., the little combination metric that I kind of invented called Snipes, is actually pretty good. That being said, when you look at the Predators season, like the whole season kind of comes down to that 18-game stretch that they had, right? Where, you look across the way and it's like Jussi Saros, like, oh man, he's pretty good. Like he could steal it. He had, I believe it was 6.9 of his 7.4 goals saved above expected came in that 18-game stretch. Philip Forsberg had 15 goals in that 18. By the way, do you know Philip Forsberg scored 48 goals this season?
Yeah.
I can't believe we weren't all sweating whether we'd get to 50 at the end there. I imagine his teammates were just absolutely blowing games late in the season, just trying to get him to that magic number. And your third best scorer is like Gustav Nyquist, and it's just like I'm not really sure kind of what to make of it because on paper the Predators look honestly almost as good as the Canucks, but fundamentally I look at the Canucks and I'm like, the one big question that we had going into the end of the season, Demko, right? Like, is he going to be back? Is he going to be fine when he comes back? And I don't know if for the last couple of periods there against the Flames, they were just like, all right, let's just let the Flames take some shots on our guy here. It doesn't do us any good to only allow like 17 shots in this entire game. Let's let him fire away 15 shots, I think, basically in each of the last two periods in that game. He comes up with 39 saves in that game. And now all of a sudden that question mark for me is like, okay, like I think we're kind of just good here. The team is healthy. The goaltender, in theory, is ready to go. He's rested more than literally every other goaltender in the league. Like, that's kind of nice. And so when you take the Predators, look at their, after that 18-game stretch, this last little bit here, where I think there's some along the lines of like 3-6, they kind of had the situation where they weren't necessarily doing the thing where they were playing playoff hockey at the end of the season, right? Like, it was just kind of like, we did it. We got in. They looked around. They're like, man, all these like Minnesota Wilds and St. Louis Blueses of the world aren't going to catch us. We've had these 8 Western Conference teams settled for a really long time. And so they kind of didn't have to play. Normally the wild card, you're like, oh man, they've been playing playoff hockey for a while now. And they just kind of haven't. Whereas we've talked about this about the Canucks. It's like, all right, show me when they get to these matchups that are going to matter with regards to clinching the division, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Oilers game, Golden Knights game, where they give up kind of 2 quick goals against the Golden Knights. And like that could have gone really bad, really quick. Because of course they've got, third string goaltender in at the time. And it's like, okay, no, you know what? We're going to grind this thing out. The last 2 periods, they are not getting any chances. Either of these playoff teams that are chasing us, we're going to get this win. We're going to clean this whole deal up. And we're going to get into the postseason here with Rick Tocchet kind of have everybody vibing on what he wants to do. And so, yeah, the price to me, I'm like not tripping over myself to pay minus 150 on a Canucks team that like, I've lived through it. It might have been a while, but I've lived through it. That being said, like I think they win this series.
So Money, I would give you an intro and a big tee up, but I've watched you sit there the entire time just smiling, waiting, ready to talk about this matchup, this breakdown. The floor is yours, So Money. Give it to us. What do you got for Canucks Preds round 1 and where the series price is?
Where to begin? So firstly, it warms my heart seeing those words come out of Alex's mouth there. For him to do a complete 180 like that on the Canucks against his Nashville team, it actually means a lot. So I'm glad that Alex is on board.
And it shows growth from Alex. It shows growth.
We do have Pozzola on record. Pozzola's gone on record to say that Nashville will beat the Canucks in the first round, right? So I think we do need an update on that, and we need to know where he stands at this point.
It's nice to have that clipped right now.
Sorry?
Yeah.
We better have that clipped and ready for socials.
Yeah. It's nice to see that Alex has come around. I'm waiting to see where Pozzola stands on this as well. Couple of things with this series, right? Pricing wise, I think it's probably fair. I think it's okay. This series could get tricky, right? So like just like taking off my fan glasses or whatever, right? Like there is a path for this series to get tricky. And that path is Saros is probably one of 4 or one of 3 goaltenders in the Western Conference that is capable of getting up to a level that can be at Demko's level, right? That's a concern. Of course, the others would be Hellebuck and Ottinger, right? So that's so that would be a concern. Yes, I know Saros hasn't had his year up to his standards, but he has the pedigree, and there is a path for him to get to get at that level. They have a dominant defenseman in the back end that can drive play, similar to what the Canucks rely on, right? So if there's a level there that Roman Josi can get to, does that neutralize what the Canucks expect out of Quinn Hughes? Ultimately, where this series comes down for me is the depth that the Canucks have at forward. If Nashville is able to make this a chaotic series, if they're able to make the Canucks run around, make this a high variance series where the games become chaotic, that could become a problem, right? The Canucks, very, very important that they stay true to what got them here. And yes, they put up a lot of goals, but that isn't what drove this Canucks season. What drove this Canucks season was always starting at the back end. Not necessarily strong defensive numbers, but structured play, right? And the reliance on an elite goaltender to get them out of tough situations. So as long as the Canucks remember their DNA, and Matt will tell you, there's been many, many years where we've forgotten what got us here. As long as they remember that, I think ultimately the Canucks' depth at forward should be too much for Nashville to overcome.
Okay, there you go. There's our little matchup and breakdown how these two teams go head to head here, and talking a little bit about series prices. But let's get into the gritty part of this, and let's look at some best bets for this series. We're not just talking about series prices here. We're looking into some of the other markets, the other corners of the sports books that people maybe haven't looked at or aren't sure where they can find some value here. If we're looking at this Nashville-Vancouver series, Moretto, what's a way that you would want to attack this one? What's a best bet that you've maybe got for this series as of right now?
So Money basically just stole a lot of what I was going to say. And I mean, maybe not stole it. I mean, he is, one of our two resident Canucks experts. So that's fair. Maybe just lends itself to the fact that I am on the right page here. But I'm just going to keep it simple, and I'm just going to lay it with the Canucks series price here. I'm not going to get too into the weeds. I'm just going to bet the Canucks to win this series at the, minus 150s or so that are pretty widely available. And what it boils down to is the fact that the Predators, Matt touched on how a lot of their season kind of boiled down to that 16-0-2 sort of stretch that they had, where what this team sort of relies on a lot is generating a very high volume of chances in order to score goals, because, they don't have that elite high-end skill up front outside of that top line. They are sort of a one-line team right now, and depth scoring is a real issue. And that is not, matchup-wise, this is not a good team for them to face in the Canucks, a team that is, has that depth up front that So Money was mentioning, that's going to be able to put a true checking line on that top line and really neutralize them and force Nashville to get goals from elsewhere, which they have really struggled to do so. And then you're talking not only about, having guys struggling to score beyond that top line, you're also having to score on Demko. So it just makes it really difficult for Nashville. So I don't know that they even are going to be able to play their brand of like high octane, caution to the wind, high event, back and forth sort of hockey that they've been sort of leaning on, where they've been a little bit leaky at the back, but they've been generating a ton of opportunities up front. I don't think they're going to be able to do that against this Vancouver team. I don't think Vancouver is stupid enough to let them. This is a well-coached team and a very cohesive group. I don't think they're going to let them get into that sort of run and gun style of hockey. They're going to drag them down, make them play playoff hockey. They're going to be the team that's generating a bit more offense and really kind of shutting things down in the back end and sort of sheltering Demko. And then once you do kind of penetrate that, you have Demko there. So matchup wise, I think it's just not a great one for the Predators here. And I'm just going to lay it with the Canucks around the minus 150s and maybe there will be another opportunity to fade this team down the stretch. I don't know. I don't want to give these guys too much credit,
You know what? We don't do that. We're not doing that. Come on.
But how refreshing is this, right? Like, the Canucks are the team that is able to play playoff hockey, and it's their opponent that needs to drag them into a chaotic style. We've grown up with it being the other way around, right? So it's really nice to see that it's the Canucks who are the playoff team.
Yep.
Yeah,
100%.
and they're built
No,
like
go ahead,
it with depth up front and the size on the back end. I mean, they've got both, the great goaltending and the ability to play, good defense. Those are like four things that just all shout playoff hockey. So yeah, things have definitely changed from the Sedin days, I guess.
Yeah, and honestly, like, obviously from an ideal perspective, you want to get into playoff hockey mode and as Alex likes to say, low event hockey for the Canucks. But like, by the way, if like the Nashville Predators want to get weird, like, and the worst thing that happens is that the Canucks have to rely on Elias Pettersson and JT Miller and Brock Besser, et cetera, Quinn Hughes to like score a lot of goals and get a couple of big saves from Thatcher Demko, like, okay, like backup plan's kind of pretty good in this series as well in this matchup, right? And so it's like, yeah, I would prefer sort of like having everything like super tight so things don't get a little crazy. But like if they do, it's like I kind of think this team's the more talented team from a skater perspective and from a goaltending perspective. Because, I referenced that Saros stat about that 18-game stretch. And listen, that stretch exists, right? So you can't like wipe it clear off the face of the earth. Admittedly, they played 6 playoff teams out of those 18 games. Yeah. So like, yeah, maybe it wasn't like the most
And
tough.
Vegas was 2 of them and they were struggling quite a bit in that stretch there.
Yeah, and I believe the Kings were in there as well. And the Kings are, I mean, we can get to the Kings at a later day, but holy cow, that team up and down. And so I just look at it like, okay, well, if Saros the rest of the time was essentially like a 0.05 goal saved above expectation goaltender, it's like the Predators are coming in with the expectation that this guy's going to play like a Colorado Avalanche goaltender. And that is not a compliment, right? So it's like, okay, you're getting mediocre goaltending. You have kind of just one line that's really good, and it includes Gustav Nyquist and Ryan O'Reilly. Like, I just, again, like sometimes you just kind of have to step away from the spreadsheet, which I think does give the Predators a lot of credit, and just kind of look at this and go like, how do you guys want to play this? Because I think the Canucks win this a couple of different ways. And so I think they win this convincingly. And so I'm going for it, man. I'm taking the Canucks -2.5 in the handicap, the series handicap here at some juicy plus 200 and plus 250 type numbers out there. Whatever you can get your best price available. Plus 275 is kind of, I think, pretty standard out there.
Nice. There we go. So money grinning over there. Agreeing with that. We got Canucks outright. We got Canucks -2.5. So money. What do you got for us? Are you just going to continue to add on to the Canucks parade right now?
Yes, but in a different way, right? So
-1.5. Find us in between there. We're laddering. This podcast is a ladder. It's just it's one long Canucks ladder. Just laddering it up. Let's go. No,
I'm actually looking at a goal scorer, right? So, so with the way that the matchup goes, right? Like we've talked about, Nashville has one scoring line. So theoretically, you can neutralize that with the strong checking line. Now, what is the checking line that the Canucks have? You could make a case it's the Dakota Joshua, Garland, Lindholm line. But the great thing about the Canucks this year is that line can score, right? And that doesn't need to be your checking line. So like even if the Canucks want to match up that line against the Nashville top line, it means that those 3 guys are going to be on the ice a lot, right? So then now it opens up that there's going to be scoring from that line, right? So Lindholm, I expect a strong defensive or a strong two-way series from him. I think that this is the kind of series where the Canucks can really, really rely on him. You have Dakota Joshua, who's really come into his own. He can actually drive play, right? So that leaves who's going to score the goals. So at 12-1, I'm going to go with Connor Garland to have the most goals in this series. And I think that if this series goes the way that the Canucks need it to go, he is the type of player in this series that would absolutely excel, right? He will get minutes if he's being matched up against the top line. He can score. He is that kind of, he's got that grit element to him. And if the Canucks want to play that way, he's the guy that's going to get the goals. So Connor Garland, 12-1, most goals in this series.
Oh, baby. Canucks. It's all Canucks here. As we've gone through our best bets, now let's close this one out with some predictions. We'll take the betting aside, just given what you think about the matchups, how these two teams go head to head. I don't think it's going to be hard here to guess what everyone's going to pick. Let's go around the table here. Moretto, start with you. Predictions for this series. Winner and series outcome. What's the final series score?
I'm going to say... you know what? I think the Matt's onto something there too. I can kind of see it playing out that way. I'm gonna say 4-1 Canucks. Pretty convincing here. Demko really steals one or two of those games, though. It's not like just a super lopsided series. There are a lot of tight games in there, but ultimately just Nashville can't get the score and can't beat Demko. And 4-1 Canucks.
Matt, over to you. Your prediction.
Well, I sort of believe in kind of playing out what we've sort of seen throughout the regular season on this show, which means either we've got a triple, 3-on-1 side deal with the Predators and the Canucks. We saw how that went early on the season, so I'm a little bit nervous from that perspective. That being said, like the fact that we got beat on those three, what are we even calling those?
Triple best bets or
triple best bet, I guess. Yeah,
the triple axle.
Yeah, we got a triple axle going here on the Canucks. What could possibly go wrong? But really more, it's about the fact that, we tried this with the Predators against the Canucks. So, the fact that, if anybody knows what we're getting ourselves into, it should be us. I was getting the needle ready to go because, So Money was absolutely speaking my language with the Connor Garland thing. I'd throw a little sprinkle on our guy Dakota Joshua. As well at 30, I'm seeing 30-1 to lead the series in scoring. And again, Alex, if we've got only a 5-game series here, right, that leaves open the possibility for things to get a little bit weird in the most points and particularly the most goals. 3 goals might do it in a 5-game series, especially if they're relatively low. So let's add a little bit to that. And then also, you know what? Maybe we throw a little sprinkle on Thatcher Demko, Conn Smythe at this point in the production, because again, best case scenario, right? Well, first of all, if we think it's going to be a relatively easy, and again, I'm using easy with the biggest quotation marks you could possibly find, in the universe, but we feel the same way about, or at least I think we probably feel the same way about the Carolina Hurricanes and maybe the Rangers, et cetera, right? Where those teams, given their sort of place in the standings and regard in the market and all of that sort of thing, their goaltenders aren't priced as nearly as long as Demko. So we might be getting, might have something here with a guy who gets a pretty, again, easy route out of the first round in the same way those other guys do at a significantly higher price. And the coolest thing about the Canucks playing the Predators, which again, we shouldn't just talk about the Predators if there's some garbage team who's definitely going to lose this series. But the cool thing is we get to watch all these other teams in the West play each other, right? And knock each other off. Just the fact that I'm, at the, not to spoil it or anything, but we don't know yet the matchups yet in the West as we're recording this. But looking at some of them, it's okay, cool, man. Knock yourself out, Golden Knights, against the Oilers or against the Stars or whatever combination it turns out to be. 3 other really good teams are definitely getting knocked out in the West. Now, I mean, that just says okay, how good the West is, but those might be real fist fights. So if the Canucks can get out of this with a 5-game or maybe a sweep or something like that, everybody's rested, everybody's sort of having a better chance while these other teams are in these absolute wars. By now, as I guess the point, and with the Canucks being so deep from a scoring perspective, I don't think there's going to be a guy running out and hiding. And if they're going to play the low event hockey that's good in the playoffs and is going to get them to a Stanley Cup final, knock on wood, quotation marks, all that stuff, the goaltender is always kind of that guy that everybody defaults to, right? So he might have the same odds as some of the other Canucks forwards or skaters, but he's going to be the guy that potentially everybody looks to as their best player. And he probably needs to be, as most goaltenders do in any sort of Stanley Cup run.
So series prediction final.
Oh, well, I'm already in, man. 4-1, right? -2.5. I wouldn't dare say a sweep. Let's not get crazy.
Fair enough.
But 4-1 is the prediction.
Okay. So we got 4-1. So Money. Winner. Don't even know why I ask winner, but winner. And what's the final series score?
So I'm actually going with Nashville in this series.
Yeah.
So look, I want to touch on a couple of things that Matt was mentioning. Demko, Conn Smythe. Look, realistically, again, let's look at this objectively, right? The Canucks are going to go as far as Demko takes them, right? I know that Casey DeSmith is very capable, but I'm talking about long term here, where you need to win 16 games in the playoffs, right? Demko is the only one that can do that for you, right? There are going to be times in this playoff series, even in the Nashville series, and definitely if the Canucks move on throughout the course of the next, hopefully then the 3 series after that, where there's going to be times where Demko is going to have to be the guy and the absolute reason why the Canucks won that game, even though they were outplayed by Dallas or Winnipeg or Colorado, whoever it is, Edmonton, right? The Canucks won that game because of Demko. And there's going to be enough of those situations that if the Canucks make it to the Stanley Cup final and hopefully ultimately win the Stanley Cup, where I can finally die in peace, then it is going to be Demko who is going to be getting that Conn Smythe. So I think that's a great look. Secondly, Matt asked what could go wrong, right? So again, objectively, there are things that could go wrong, right? So I worry about Demko rust early. I worry about the Canucks losing their minds, which has happened this year. Let's not forget and like kind of talk about this Canucks team as a team that did no wrong throughout the whole season. There were situations where this team lost their identity, right? And I remember those situations very clearly, right? So it could happen, right? This is not a team that has tons of playoff experience. So even in this series, I can see a situation where maybe there's one game where the Canucks lose their mind. Maybe there's another game where Saros steals it, right? Maybe there's a game where a Demko is not up to his level. Now, hopefully, all of those things happen in one game, and the Canucks can win in 5, and we're good to go, right? But realistically, this could get tricky for the Canucks. Ultimately, they should win. So I'm going to go Canucks in 6.
Okay, Canucks in 6. So 4-1, 4-1, 4-2. I'll close this one out. I was thinking about who I thought would be able to win, where the price was currently sitting at. And then I realized that when I show up to a new neighborhood and I move in for the first time, I have to go around and knock on doors and get them to sign a paper that they've acknowledged it. And I got to make sure that wherever it is that I live and when I walk my dog, I stay a certain amount away from the school because I am a Predator. We're going the Nashville Predators in 7, boys. No clean sweeps across the board here. Give me the Predators in 7. That's where I'm going. I'm adopting the Morettors, and we can call them something else because now I am a Predator throughout this first round. That's the way I'm going on this one.
Nobody believes that.
The Zackville Predators.
The Zack Predators. There we go. I'll take it. There you go. That'll do it for our series preview and predictions for the Preds Canucks first round series. If you did enjoy it, please hit that like button, subscribe here to the channel, turn on notifications. You're watching this one right now. It's not the first one that's come out, but it's not the last one that's going to come out. There'll be much more right here on this channel, breaking everything down, giving best bets, maybe giving you an idea of how some of these players, lines, and combinations and matchups might go for these series and give you an idea for your own betting. So if you do enjoy the content, please hit like. As well, the most important thing that you can do here, drop a comment below your prediction. You can tell us we're idiots all you want. We're fine with that. We're open to criticism. But why? Why are we idiots and what are we wrong about? We want to see them in the comments below. At least give us a reason why we're idiots. Like, we know we are, but why? Tell us in the comments below. Tell us in the comments below. Thanks so much for tuning in here. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for many more. We'll see you in the next Edgework series, previews, predictions, and best bets.